You're listening to Leadership Loading, a podcast that inspires leaders to be continuous learners and provides insight for those making the leap from the front line to the boardroom. My name is Jason McLaren, and I'm an Air Force firefighter veteran and safety expert turned entrepreneur and nonprofit director. I'm sitting down with industry leaders to talk about their leadership traits and lessons they have learned that can make an impact on future leaders. Hey everybody, it's Jason McLaren and this is Leadership Loading. Today my guest is Lucas Root. He's a business mentor, change manager, and a founder of SGIC Consulting. He connected with me through Facebook and I just was looking at some of his stuff. Wanted to bring him on, talk about some military transition skills and working from home and startup information. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so can you give us a little bit of your background and what your knowledge skills are?
Yeah. First, let me start off by saying I am not a vet. That's just not the path that my life took me. But I have tremendous respect for vets. And I think that being a vet should be, whether it is or not, it should be something that we as a society look at with a tremendous amount of respect and even to some degree awe. And I think being a vet should be a desirable trait in civilian life. So anyway, a little bit about me. So I was born and raised in northern Vermont, out in the backwoods. I went to college in northern New York. I got 3 degrees while I was in college, and I graduated with a BS in engineering, physics, and math. Launched myself into Wall Street, where I worked in the projects world in mergers and acquisitions. I did that more or less intentionally in order to expose myself to an enormous variety of business challenges and some of the brightest minds in the world, the people who are in a position to be able to, solve those business challenges. And it worked. I was on Wall Street for 17 years. I worked my way up to operations leadership about 4 years ago when I quit to launch my consulting business. And I've been bringing that sort of playbook of business challenge knowledge to my consulting business for the last 4 years. A year ago, I decided that it was time for me to start to broaden my offering to the world, give back a little bit, start to help out the market a little bit that helped to create me and who I am and what I can bring to the market, right? And that's when I started doing business mentoring and speaking, public speaking, getting onto, podcasts like this and getting onto physical stages. And the point for me was the market has created this incredible opportunity, which, yes, I am the person who took advantage of that opportunity, but the market created the opportunity for me to go into mergers and acquisitions and learn a huge thing, an enormous body of knowledge around solving business problems. And I felt like, once I'd launched my consulting business and gotten to the point where I was good, I had a good, client backlog and I had great work that I really enjoyed doing. It was time for me to start bringing that body of knowledge back to the market in a way that sort of supports the market at large. And that to me was engaging with entrepreneurs and business leaders to help them to identify some of the strategic hurdles that they're maybe just about to bump into and give them some solutions in a broad perspective.
Awesome. So we were pre-chatting about this. What's your thoughts on the skills the military have when they're moving into the civilian world? What makes us a competitor, in this corporate world compared to everyone else?
That's a great question, and it's one that I'm excited by. And you're right, we pre-chatted on it, and I probably dumped a little bit more enthusiasm on you than you were prepared for this morning. I think that there are 2 different groups of skills that the military trains very, very carefully and deeply into people that are in the military, and particularly people that stay in successfully for more than one tour. The first group of skills is a teamwork group of skills, and I think that that's a relatively undervalued group of skills. The capacity to bond with your team members, to communicate effectively with them under stress, to be able to work through problems. These are all sort of teamwork skills, and I think that the more that society has big problems to deal with, particularly problems like the one that's keeping us indoors today, COVID-19, right? The more that society has big problems that it has to sort of wrap its hands and minds around, the more valuable teamwork skills become. And, it's not like big problems ever go away. Before COVID-19, there were plenty of other big problems that corporations were dealing with, or entrepreneurs or small startups, right?
Yeah.
And so the capacity to work really effectively as a team is extraordinarily valuable, number one. Number two, the military works very, very hard to ingrain the idea that routines have value. And I don't, again, I'm not a vet, so I don't really know how this is talked about inside the service, but I see it from the outside, very carefully sticking to routine training, routine eating times, routine sleeping times. And I think that routine, if it's translated the right way, and this does actually require a little bit of translation, unlike the teamwork skills, if it's translated in the right way, that acceptance of the value of routines can turn somebody into an incredibly powerful person inside themselves, and that allows them to bring that power in the form of confidence and capacity, and a higher level of decision fatigue throughout the day, right? It allows them to bring that to the world that they're working in, right? The company that they're working for, or the company that they're trying to start, their family, if they use the right routines, and we can talk about what I think those are, in order to be able to build themselves up and bring the best version of themselves out. So, short recap. Number one, the teamwork skills, incredibly valuable. Number two, that deeply ingrained acceptance of routine as a value add.
Definitely. And you talked about the teamwork. I was surprised when I got out of the military and got into the corporate world on how many teamwork classes I had to take once I became a manager. I had to take, the Coveney courses and all those. And, I was just like, this is all stuff I've done. I was leading, 10-person squads and flights, and, I was a fire captain, I was running a fire station, and I was like, this is just redundant information for me. And not to say that, you can't use refreshers, but, I could have probably taught those classes, and it was just kind of, for me, kind of a downer on what they expected of managers they were hiring, before me. And then the same thing with the routines, like you said, definitely as military, we're definitely in the routines. We have our, standard operating procedures, and going back to my firefighter stuff again, every day we would check out the trucks, and you had a checklist, and you had to make sure that, all these things were checked and all the equipment was working. And I'm sure all the other career fields have the same thing with, aircraft, being a highly reliable piece of equipment, that thing needs to be checked every time before it's, taken off. So we're definitely skilled at all that stuff, and able to push that into the workplace.
Yeah, and apply it personally. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. It surprises me every single day, and I worked my way up in the corporate world. It surprised me even then that things that I think should be basic human skills, like effective communication and teamwork, are things that that you have to be trained in the corporate setting. And I'm not talking this is how you do it in a corporate setting, or, this is an application of a basic human skill to the corporate world or to this particular corporation. No, it's basic human skills training.
Right.
And every single person who comes out of the military has that training. Every single one of them.
Yeah. I mean, we have to make sure that we're following all the rules, and you get an order and you have to do it. And it's one of them things that it just goes back to what I was talking about earlier. I was just surprised how much HR things there are involved in the corporate world that as a military, we just naturally adapt to those things because, we got to comply. So, all right.
So I
Yeah.
realize this is your podcast, but let me ask you a question if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
In the process of transitioning, as you sort of became that corporate manager that you were talking about and became less of a transitioning vet, did you ever notice that you were able to take to those skills and perhaps even apply them better than your colleagues who had not been in the military? And keep in mind, I'm asking this sort of as a leading question because I believe the answer will be yes. You probably did apply those skills better.
Definitely. Obviously, my more senior managers that had been in the field for a while and developed leadership skills, I learned from them. But when I got to a leader that was a new leader, maybe they had, become a director or something just by, chance there was an opening and they got in there. And I could definitely tell, they were more micromanagey, or you could just tell the different leadership styles compared to what I had adapted over my military career. And, because in the military, you don't have a lot of micromanagers because everybody has to do what they have to do. And
Yeah,
you don't have time to
you can't.
micromanage. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so those are the ones, I didn't stick around very long in that job because it wasn't going to fit for me when I could excel further on my own or move to a
So
different job.
I'd like to dig in on that a little bit because that mirrors my experience in working with people who are, who were former military as well. I found that people in the military learn very, very quickly that you have to trust your team to do their job in the military. And when you get out of the military, that sort of basic assumption, and it is an assumption, but I think it's an appropriate one, that basic assumption that your team will succeed as a team, it really allows you to, when you're a member of the team and not the leader, it allows you to stay focused on what it is that you need to do without being distracted by whether or not your team is going to pull their weight, right? And then as a
Definitely.
leader, it allows you to disconnect a little bit from that tendency in the civilian world to micromanage because, again, you have this basic assumption that your team will execute. And that assumption in the military is just as ingrained as the routines I was talking about, in that, you go through basic training, they give you hard tasks, you fail as a team. As a team, no one person fails, you fail as a team. And that's just sort of part of what it is to be a team. You succeed as a team, you fail as a team, everything is team related. And that means that the best way for you to succeed in the military is to do the thing that you're doing as well as possible so that everybody else around you can focus on what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of my teams I've taken over throughout the years are kind of surprised that I have such a laissez-faire leadership style because, like you said, I have things I got to do if I'm in a director role or something like that. I've got plenty of meetings and plenty of high-level, uh, forecasting I need to do to get that department or that company where I need it to be in the next year or 2 years, 5 years, whatever. I don't have time to be worrying about the day-to-day, you minor task. That's, like you said,
Yeah.
that's what I got them for, and I have people in place. And like, once again, these leaders come up through the ranks, unfortunately, and they've taken over these departments and just micromanage them to death. And when I get there and I take over, and they're like, your leadership style is just so much different.
Mhm.
So
That's not to say you're not there for your team, right? If they need your help, if they need some mentoring, you're absolutely there.
yeah,
But you're there only when they need you. You're not there all the time.
yeah, it goes back to that open door policy. I've always literally have my door open to my office, even though sometimes it's right on like a main hallway or something, and you get a lot of traffic. But my team always knows they can come walk in and ask me questions or whatever they need. And usually I start the day with like a daily coffee huddle. As soon as we get in the door and everybody gets their coffee,
Hmm.
we just chat real quick, and I make sure there's no fires I need to put out as far as leadership. Because there's some things they can't control, and they do need my level of authority to get something taken care of. But um, and that's when they bring them up, and we're able to put those fires out early in the morning, and they're able to go focus on their task without having to worry about some other director or leader in the organization coming after them. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sorry for hijacking the
Oh no,
conversation.
that's all right.
Would would you say that that daily huddle is a routine?
Yeah, yeah. And that
So
goes
this
back to my
might make the
military.
perfect pivot.
Yeah. And I'll go
Um,
back on that. That goes back to my military. In the military, pretty much every organization has a morning roll call. And that's basically what it is. It's just a little roll call. But when you have a team of only 10 or 15, you don't have to do a full formation like you do when you have, a squadron of 50 or 60 people. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, it's basically a roll call, and it's just more informal. But yeah, so let's go into routines. We're talking about uh, right now, COVID's going on if you're listening to this, and uh, everybody's stuck at home and working from home. And Lucas wrote an article about pro tips from working from home, and I'd like to pick his brain on routines and how we can stick to our routines or what routines we need to develop while we're working from home.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Um, so this is something I feel really strongly about, and part of the reason is, I've done a huge amount of research over the past 2 decades while I've been in the corporate world on what are the skills that highly effective people have, and there are some books out there that are great. Um, and it's not a hard thing to study. A lot of people are paying attention to this, so it's pretty easy to find information on it. And I've distilled those, at least my learnings over the last 2 decades, down into this list of pro tips on how you can work from home. And you can see it on my LinkedIn profile. So anybody who's listening who wants to see that can go there. But the crux of it is routines. And this sort of goes back to something that your listeners, particularly the ones that are coming out of the military, sort of have a leg up on, is that if you use the right routines, you can create an intentional day, right? You can make your day exactly as good as you want it to be, and that can be consistent. And it's through the use of the right routines in the right way at the right time that you can engineer consistent high productivity. And that's something I love about what the military does in the application of routines. And so you're talking about having a daily huddle. And I think that's a fantastic routine from a management perspective to create the beginnings of that sort of effective day across your team, right? And you talked about some of the things that you're able to do because of that daily huddle. At the beginning of the day that you need to manage, these 3 issues across these 3 other teams that are, interfacing with your team. And by knowing that at the beginning of the day, you can make sure that that doesn't interfere with the productivity of your team. Now, we can also take a look at this at a personal level. I love the use of a morning routine to kick off your day in a very consistent way so that your body knows that you've got its back, right? It's kind of a weird way of talking about your psyche, your body, your being in this world, right? But by telling your body, look, I've got your back, your body is able to create that consistent performance at a higher level. And we see this across, incredible high performers in the world today who are doing exactly this. So I use a morning routine. I use small breaks throughout the day that are strategically placed. I have a lunch routine, and then I have an end of day routine. And it's through these, these very carefully tuned routines that I can create the kind of high quality, high productivity consistency in my life that I need in order to be successful and effective at, running the businesses that I run, consulting, mentoring, and then sharing some of that knowledge with audiences like yours. So we can talk about the routines that I implement in my life if you want, or we could talk about sort of what I might consider a beginning level routine that people could implement today in order to be effective in the work from home environment, and then maybe how that might look as they return back to an office. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about the moving back to the office, because I know a lot of people, they say it's 21 days to develop a routine. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to be into that 21-day mark, and then everybody's going to be like, oh, now we got to go back to work. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it might be longer than 21 days. But if you don't take the opportunity, and you're absolutely right, we have an opportunity here. If you don't take the opportunity to create those routines in your life as part of an intentional routine for yourself, to build yourself up, to create that daily, weekly, monthly, consistent productivity now, then you're absolutely right. As soon as we go back to the office, it's going to be out the door. So here's a real quick fly through of what I might look at. For starters, anyone who doesn't have a routine, who's just sort of rolling out of bed and hopping on their laptop and they consider that the start of their day, look at the way that you engineer your day when you're going to the office. You have a morning routine, even if it's not intentional. So start by mimicking your morning routine, your noon routine, your nighttime routine, even though the way that you carry out your day hasn't been an intentional routine. So you get up, you shower, you shave, you eat some breakfast, you get dressed, you hop in the car, and you drive to work. Well, we're not going to work, but you can do the get up, shower, shave, eat breakfast, and get dressed. And I recommend that you do. And then maybe take a 10 or 15-minute walk, which mimics, from a psyche perspective, it mimics commuting to work, so that your body is used to this idea that you have a routine and that you're following it, right? And that helps tell your body, hey, the workday has begun. It's time for me to get out of play mode and into productive mode, right? Do the same thing at lunch. If you're at your corporate office, you get up from your desk, you walk to the lunchroom, you pull out your brown bag, or maybe you get up from your desk, you go outside, you order some lunch from, the bodega on the corner. Whatever that happens to be, you have gotten up from your desk, you walked for 5 to 10 minutes, you're sitting down somewhere other than your desk, and that's when you eat. So again, mimic that in your home life. Get up from your desk, walk for 5 to 10 minutes, sit down and eat for 40 minutes, get up, walk for 5 to 10 minutes, return to your desk. And then at the end of the day, whatever your end of day typical routine happens to be, you get up from your desk, you walk for 5 to 10 minutes. If your typical end of day routine is go out for a beer with some coworkers, well, it's kind of funny, but in this case, I would recommend that you continue to do that. Hop on a Zoom meeting with those people that you would normally go out for a beer with, and have a Zoom meeting happy hour at the end of your workday. And then again, you'd be driving home from that. Let's say you had 1 beer, you'd be driving home. If you had 3, maybe you'd be taking an Uber, but in either case, it's 10 or 15 minutes of commuting time to get home. So do that again at the end of the day, hop on that Zoom meeting, have your beer with your normal after work friends, and then take a 10 or 15-minute walk to close out the day. And your body will thank you, and you'll see a change in the way that you're productive at work now. So that's sort of how you kick off a routine. And that's a really easy way for the average person to get into these routines that are going to be moderately effective at creating a productive, normal work day. Now, when you go back to work in, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, however long it takes, those normal routines are going to kick right back in, and you're not going to need to do those from an intentional perspective anymore. Here's an opportunity over the time between now and then for you to evolve that morning routine into something that's more specifically customized to creating value for you throughout your day, and something that you'll add to that morning routine as you're returning back to the office. Some of the activities, depending on where you want to move them and how you want to apply them, that I find very useful are a workout. And that's going to be real easy for your military listeners to see them applying, right? Meditation and journaling. I find that those three things, if they're applied carefully, can create an incredible amount of value. So here's how I do it, my personal routine. I get up at 5 a.m., again, something that your military listeners are going to find very easy. I do not drink coffee when I get up at 5 a.m. I do a very, very light workout. I mean, very light. For 20 minutes, the intent is to just raise my heart rate enough so that my body starts to flush the cortisol out of its system. It's something that, is very beneficial for you getting out of that sympathetic state and into a parasympathetic state where your body is approaching the day with an open approach. Immediately after the workout, and this is part of the reason why it needs to be very light, I meditate. I do not do those in reverse order. You get up at 5 a.m. and try to meditate, you might meditate yourself right back to sleep.
Right.
So light workout, meditate, and then I do a little bit of learning. So 20 minutes of, I'll pull up Duolingo, or I'll open up one of my course apps that teaches speed reading or memory. It doesn't really matter what it is that you're spending your time learning. Or I'll take out a book on leadership or some other skill that's worth continuing my studying on, and I'll do a little bit of reading. So my morning routine every single day starts at 5 a.m. It's an hour long, 20 minutes light workout, 20 minutes meditation, 20 minutes learning or learning reading. Excuse me. Then I have my coffee, and that's how I start my day. At lunch, I do 10 or 15 minutes of walking. I sit down, I eat, and then I'll do another very light workout. So 15 or 20 minutes of a light jog. Now I work from home always, so it's not hard for me to deal with managing a shower, right? But you go back to corporate life, it might not be easy to do this. So that might be a really good place, the second half of your lunch break, to implement journaling or meditating or both. And then the end of the day, that's typically when I do a much harder workout, right? Because I really like to get deep sweat at some point in the day. And for me, I start my workday at 6 a.m., which means I get to end my workday sometime between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. So it's really easy for me to get in a hard workout at 3 p.m. without, impacting my capacity to have social time or, go out or go to bed at the right time, or even, whatever it is that I need to do after my workout. But I like to do my hard workout at the end of the day. And that's a really effective way of closing off the day for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been doing the same thing, getting up, the same time I usually get up, and doing all the same routines. And my wife finds it a little odd that I'm still, dressing in my work clothes. I'm like, well, I only have 2 pairs of jeans, so I have to wear my slacks, and can't really wear a t-shirt with slacks. So I said, I might as well just put on my regular quote unquote uniform that I wear every day. And, even though I'm not going anywhere, but, every once in a while I got a video conference or something I got to do. So, and the people on there are like, oh, Jason dressed up. I'm like, I'm just wearing what I normally wear. So, but yeah.
I think that people are looking at this COVID situation as an opportunity for them to stay in bed with their pajamas on all day, with their laptop in my lap. And I do not recommend it. you might be able to be productive some of the time when you're doing that. But if you want to be productive, and you should want to be, right? If you want to be productive, you need to tell your body, my workday has begun, and then my workday has ended. And the best way to do that is by using the routine that your body is used to. Get up, shower, shave, put on work clothes.
Yep.
So I agree. Put on your slacks, put on a nice shirt, not because you want to be dressed up, but because that's the best way to communicate to your body that the workday has begun.
Yep. And that's the same, like you said, your workout. I don't really work out, but I got 2 acres, a little mini farm here, and usually when I
Oh,
get
nice.
back from work, that's when I got to do my honeydews. And so
Mm-hmm.
around 4:30 or 5 every day, that's when I go outside and start, putting up fence posts or, feeding the goats and, doing all that stuff. So, but like you said, I'm just keeping that same routine, um, and keeping my body going. So.
And just again, pardon me for hijacking the question asking a little bit, but how effective are you seeing that in terms of continuing to create daily productivity that you might normally expect of yourself going to the office?
It's very beneficial. I mean, because otherwise I think my brain gets foggy if I'm not in a routine, because
Yeah.
it doesn't really know what to do next. And so, um, just like during my commute is when I used to listen to podcasts, and then once I got, you know, situated, I'd turn on some more podcasts. Well, now I'm not listening to as many, but I created a second podcast, so I'm recording more during that time. Um, but yeah, so it's if I'm not in that routine, then and I've done it a couple of days where I did try to just work from my laptop in my bed, because either my office was too hot or cold, or my daughter was acting up or whatever. But it's hard
Yeah.
to get
I
in
mean,
that
it's
routine.
fun.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having occasional novelty, but if you want to have consistent high level productivity, which I think everyone should want, right? If you want that, then you need to create routines in your life or continue to utilize routines that have been created for you, but now utilizing them intentionally. You need to use those routines in order to create that consistent productivity.
Yeah. Well, we're going a little over time, but I wanted to ask. I brought up the kids thing, and what about the routine when your kid is out of their routine? My daughter, she's 3 and can't go to daycare because they're kind of semi shut down. And what do you think about that? As far as maintaining your routine when your people around you cannot?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I've been pondering that a little bit myself. And that hasn't been a problem for me and my family yet, but who knows, that may change as well. Um, I would, and this is going to be an extended period of time, right? Because all schools have been canceled, at least here in California and mostly on the West Coast, for the rest of the year. And so whatever classes are being held, they're being held online. So it is a new routine at the very least. And for those people that are home, you know, you as a parent, you're in a situation where you can or perhaps must create a routine, a new routine that's going to carry through until daycare picks up again in the autumn, in the fall, right? So that's probably what I would do. I would look for good, productive, value add routines that you can create for your kids right now, and start to implement those so that for the next 6 months, you as a family don't go crazy. Now, I'm not sure what that might look like at the family level, but here's what I would think about. I would think about one, a morning walk. Just like I'm recommending you do at the personal level, do it at the family level. A morning walk, 15, 20 minutes. It helps your kids know that sort of playtime is over and the day has begun. And that's going to be valuable for them on the personal level. It's also going to be valuable for them because they're going to get used to the idea that shortly after that routine, you're going to be retreating to your workspace, and they have to leave you alone until you break for lunch, and you have a routine for that, and then break at the end of the day, and you have a routine for that. And so they're going to get used to the idea that you have to be out of their sight for, you know, 2 large chunks of 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then give them something to do. The truth is that there are lots of things to do. There's learning, there's coloring, there's chores around the house. You have a little mini farm, so your 3-year-old daughter, I mean, she isn't necessarily going to stick to a chore until it's finished yet, because she's too young. But having something to do, and she does it every single day the same way, is going to help her be used to that as a daily routine in her life.
Definitely. My downside is her playroom is also my office, because I usually only work from home 1 day a week, but now I'm here every day. But we've made it work. So,
Yeah.
well, Lucas, how
And she
can?
still has something to do, right?
Oh yeah, we got the rest of the house and the rest of the property to do stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, Lucas, how can people get a hold of you if we want to follow up on this?
Thank you. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me would be either my website, lucasroot.com, lucasroot.com, or find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, and that's at Luke, L-U-C, Root, R-O-O-T. So at Luke Root, no dots, no underscore, just at Luke Root.
Awesome. I'll definitely add you on my side. Well, thanks, Luke.
Awesome.
Lucas, thanks for sharing all your information with us. I think this was really informative, especially given what we're going through now, and we'll get it out there for everybody to get some value from it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.